super quick good morning. If you've tuned in early, well done, welcome. We start the stream a little bit early so people can find it, but the actual service time will start at 10 o'clock. So you got 7 minutes to go get a cup of tea, or 6 minutes now. Get a cup of tea, stretch your legs, put on your fancy slippers, you go into church slippers, and we'll be back. We're ready to actually kick off at 10 o'clock. But welcome if you're here early. Enjoy some mingling time in your living rooms with whoever's there with you. See you at 10. Good morning. Sorry, had to fix that. Okay, welcome. Hello, everybody who has tuned in this morning. Very, very glad to be touching base with you this Sunday. Coming towards, hopefully, the end of the sermons and messages coming from this lovely cream wall in the sort of basement of my house. Quick update of where we are before we kick into today's message. In the following weeks, restrictions are being eased, which will mean we can potentially get a team together to stream a fuller service from the church down on William Street. Question is, we're still wrestling with whether we should do this. How many people do we get together? We are allowed a congregation of 10. How do we manage that? To help us make that decision, hopefully you would have got to this week's email from me, which included just a little 4-answer survey of what you would really benefit from. We don't want to just do things because that's what we used to do. We don't want to do things because we can. We simply want to do what will help you in your faith, that is in your pursuit of living a life imitating Jesus, connecting with Father, connecting with Spirit. So there are 4 little things you could select in that email. I love what we're doing. This is great. Don't bother changing till we can, fully reimagine. A couple of songs would be nice. We might stream a couple of songs. We might play a couple of songs at the beginning. Third option is we would put on a full service, and it would be like you're sitting in a pew, only you're sitting at home. Stream a whole thing like that. And the fourth option is I don't care what you do. I just want to see some people in real life, which doesn't help us that much, but may help us know where you're at. So if you could fill that out in that weekly email. If you didn't get the weekly email, just send a message to me somehow and let me know what would help you in your faith. That would be very, very helpful for us. All right, but let's kick on. We're getting towards the end of potentially the lockdown. Things are easing, and I'm looking forward to that. I don't know where you're at. I've enjoyed elements of this time. There's been some wonderful gifts in it, but there's also been some, interesting dynamics that have grown up. Now, I have loved learning more about just the intricacies of everyone in my household. Little Jemima, she turned 1 this week, and it's very, very exciting because at 1, you really see more elements of a personality start to bubble through into reality. She's gorgeous. She is a whole lot of fun. She loves to talk. She loves to read books. She wants to hold the book when she's reading it. She doesn't want you to hold it. She's incredibly curious, into everything. Wants to know what everything tastes like, which is exhausting as a parent, but she's a lot of fun. And she's different to the other kids. I mean, Ezra, he also loves words. He will be in a book every moment of the day, given the chance. Phoebe, she loves numbers. She prefers numbers to words, and she loves to create. She'll always be found in her little studio making something or painting something. They're all different. Hannah and I, we're different. I love constant music. I love music playing all the time. Hannah likes quiet, silence, no music. So we're learning these funny dynamics because we've been together in a house for 8 weeks. And it's reminded me, every single person is different. No 2 people are the same. There are similarities, yes, across humanity, but everyone is unique. Everyone is incredibly complex. Everyone has all these different attributes. And it leads into the question that's going to underpin today's message and this second chapter of Hebrew, because everybody is different, okay? So the question is, well, what does it mean to be human? What is the underpinning reality of what it means to be human? And then what does it mean that Jesus shared that humanity? Now, last year, I preached through Luke, and one of the key themes I taught on as I preached through Luke was the humanity of Jesus. I'm sure you remember it. I'm sure you're sitting at home going, oh, yes, Nicholas, of course. It changed my life. Your preaching's so wonderful. That's what encouragement I'm sure I'd be getting if we were together in person. And it's a fun exercise. It was a fun theme to use to revisit the book of Luke because it's a challenging thought, isn't it, to focus on the humanity of Jesus. It makes us use one of the skills that I introduced last week, which was holding two thoughts which appear to be at odds in your mind at once. Holding two seemingly opposing thoughts at once in your mind. Now, you might say, I can't do that. It's too difficult. And yeah, look, some people say the highest form of intelligence is being able to hold two opposing thoughts in your mind at once. But I say pish posh to that. No way. Listen, have you ever been tickled? You might have to go back to when you were a child, but think about being tickled, all right? At the same time as you're being tickled, you are giggling and laughing with glee while wishing and hoping this torture will stop. All right? Giggling in glee, ha ha ha, this is ridiculously fun. At the same time, please stop it. I'm going to die from the giggles. You've got two opposing thoughts being held in your mind at the same time. So you can do it. You've been able to do it since you were a child, in fact. What I'm inviting you to do is use that ability now in your pursuit of God, in your exploration of faith. And yes, even though we could do it as children, as we were tickled, it is hard. It's hard because we have been so deeply drilled in one particular way of thinking. So deeply drilled in this way of thinking of a scientific method where we have a question, we set up a test, we measure results, and we come up with a black and white answer. It's quite rigid. There is truth, we find it, everything else, not truth. It's a great way of thinking. It's a wonderful way of thinking if you want to do science. It's really good for that. If you want to explore attributes of God's work, then it's really, really good for that. With that way of thinking, we can study the created world. We can study people. We can study things that are black and white. But to study God himself, it's a really inept way of thinking because it doesn't allow for the mystery and complexities of God. This is why the humanness of Jesus is such a fun thing to be talking about. It's like a little theological tickle, isn't it? Because we've got God who is completely human in Jesus, but still completely divine. And those two things can't be together, but they are. It has us giggling with glee and also sort of wishing it would stop. But that complexity is part of answering this question. And it's okay that it's difficult because God has always loved flipping our thinking. Think about it. From the very, very beginning, remember this, Jesus, who is the revelation of the glory and majesty and wonder and mystery and might of the cosmic creator, revealed his glory by giving it up and stepping in to the broken shell of humanity. This is the whole baseline of what God did through Jesus. From the very beginning, the incarnation, our ideas of power and glory have been flipped. We're going to flesh this out a bit more, all right? Foundations. I want to start with just some foundational truths that we need to understand. Let's double check it. Last week, we talked about the author of the Hebrew introducing the Jesus layer, that he's inviting us to read all Israel's scriptures through. He said, remember, God has been speaking up till now through the prophets and through the angels, but now that was great. We want to hear through Jesus. And this week, as we get into chapter 2, he unpacks why Jesus is superior to the angels. Now, I need to do a little bit of background here about angels because in your Bibles, chapter 1 might have been given the heading, Jesus superior to the angels. It's a pretty good heading because the author mentions angels 10 times in chapter 1 and the beginning of chapter 2. If you jump with me to chapter 2, verse 1, angels are here in the opening verse. It says, "We must pay the most careful attention, therefore, to what we have heard, so that we do not drift away. For since the message spoken through the angels was binding, and every violation and disobedience received its just punishment, how shall we escape if we ignore so great a salvation? This salvation, which was first announced by the Lord, was confirmed to us by those who heard him. God also testified to it by signs, wonders, and various miracles, and by the gifts of the Holy Spirit distributed according to his will." Verse 5, "It is not to the angels that he has subjected the world to come, about which we are speaking." Okay, now these opening verses are a little parenthesis sort of thing to the chapter. It's a link between chapter 1 and chapter 2, almost like a little, just want you to wrap up what I said before. You want to be listening to Jesus. Okay, it applies chapter 1 and leads in to chapter 2, the next stage of his argument, which is about Jesus' humanity compared with angels. You see it here in verse 5. "It is not to the angels that he has subjected the world to come, about which we are speaking." Right. Now, in evangelical churches, which we are, most of us, that's that background, angels don't get much game time. They just don't. They come out at Christmas time. We hang them perhaps in a tree, but often they're sort of ignored. They're sort of relegated more to your New Age festivals. Shops that sell crystals often have a lot of angels, and then sometimes the more kooky wings of the Pentecostal church are allowed to have angels. But for the evangelicals, we kind of think they're not very academic. They're not really worth our pursuit that much. And it's to our detriment. It actually leaves us with a bit of a void where we should have a robust understanding of some of God's key players. At least key players in the first half of the story anyway. So we want to fix a little bit of a hole that was there for me, and I don't know if it was there for you, but I'm going to fill it anyway, because you're not here to tell me it's not. So a quick crash course on angels so that we can understand Hebrews 2. Okay? Angels delivered the law to Israel. We can see this obviously in the book of Hebrews, but it's also told to us in Stephen's speech in Acts chapter 7. This is Stephen speaking. "This is the same Moses they had rejected with words. Who made you ruler and judge? He was sent to be their ruler and deliverer by God himself, through the angel who appeared to him in the bush." He was an angel in the bush. "He led them out of Egypt," this is Moses, "and performed wonders and sights in Egypt at the Red Sea and for 40 years in the wilderness. This is the Moses who told the Israelites, 'God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your own people.'" This is going to be unpacked later in the book of Hebrew, but we'll get to that. "He was in the assembly in the wilderness with the angel who spoke to him on Mount Sinai. And with our ancestors, he received living words to pass on to us." So it was an angel in the burning bush. Often we're just told God was in the burning bush, but here Stephen certainly says it was an angel. And it was an angel who spoke to him on Mount Sinai, giving instruction to Israel. Now, Paul also mentions it in Galatians. He's speaking about the law, how we got it. In chapter 3, he says, "Why then was the law given at all? It was added because of the transgressions until the seed to whom the promise referred had come. The law was given through angels and entrusted to a mediator." All right, so we see that angels were a major player in speaking God's words to people, and particularly in giving the law and the teachings to Israel, which established how their community and nation worked. They were God's way of showing himself to people and God's way of establishing and mediating his law. So communicating it is easy. That's really obvious in those passages. But the mediating it, or the administrating of it is a bit more difficult for us to understand. And look, this gets slightly geeky, okay? But go with me. Okay, this jumps right back to Moses' song in Deuteronomy 32. And we'll start with the NIV, the way the NIV translated it, because it's probably what most people are familiar with. Deuteronomy 32, Moses' song, the NIV translates it like this. When the Most High, God, gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided all mankind, he set up boundaries for the people according to the number of the sons of Israel. Sons of Israel. Okay, this is where translation gets really, really muddy. And if you look up this verse, comparing all translations, there's lots of difference. Okay, so the original we have, the older ones, say sons of God was that Israel translation. Israel was translated to say sons of God. Now the LXX, stick with me here, the LXX is the Greek version of the Old Testament that the early church would have had. Okay, we've got lots of old copies of this. The LXX translates this as the number of angels of the Lord. So they translate it in the LXX, the very old translation of the Hebrew scriptures. The boundaries were divided according to the numbers of the angels of the Lord. And then in our English versions, we've somehow brought that back to the sons of Israel, which most of us read and think of humans. We think of people, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the Israelite people. The boundaries were determined according to the 12 tribes, is a really obvious reading for that. But I don't think it reflects what the text is trying to say or what the belief at the time was. We later on found in the Qumran community, Cave 4, a really old version of this passage. So the oldest version we have, plucked out of Cave 4, says, according to the number of angels. Okay? So there's evidence that we have the oldest text. The thinking around this was nations were divided and set up with angels administrating over them. Okay, one of the Good News translation, okay, it's a modern translation. It says it quite simply like this. The Most High assigned nations their lands. He determined where people should live. He assigned to each nation a heavenly being. Okay, I think it's a pretty good paraphrase, if not translation. Angels are governing pockets of land or people allotted to by God. Now, we see this really explicitly in Daniel. Stick with me. How are you going? Okay, it's important. We see this in Daniel. Okay, he has a vision from an angel in chapter 10. We see how this interplay of land, places, angels, and humans works. Okay, this is the book of Daniel. Chapter 10 says, a hand touched me and sent me trembling on my hands and knees. So Daniel's been visited by the angel. And the angel continued. He said, do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before God, your words were heard. And I have come in response to them. Check this out. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me because I was detained there with the king of Persia. But now I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the future. For the vision concerns a time yet to come. We have angels and fallen angels here set up as sort of overseers of lands and empires and kingdom. And we have a messenger from God being sent to speak to a human, but he's kind of caught up in this angelic bureaucracy and he can't get through onto the turf of this other angel. And then Michael, who's sort of like, I guess, a top angelic bureaucrat, he comes in and he sorts it all out and he's like, sit down, Prince of Persia, come on, messenger, have your chat. And it's all sort of sorted out in Daniel. Apologies for bringing that theological bar really low there. But that's kind of what's happening. And it's all to set up our understanding that angels are a big deal. They've been a big deal They've been major players in how God spoke to and led and shaped humanity. But that was then. This is now. What is God doing now? Angels were great, but Jesus is better. This is bringing us back to Hebrews 2, verse 5. It's not to angels that he has subjected the world to come, about which we are speaking. All right, so God's new world. This is the hope that you and I have, what we long for, kingdom reality. It's not some detached, spiritually governed, disconnected form where the angels control and dictate what's going on. God is redeeming all of creation. The new kingdom that he has established through Jesus is not subjected to angels. The focus has shifted. The modes of leading, the modes of communication and guiding have changed. The new kingdom isn't given over to Michael and his angels. Now, in Jesus, we see the inauguration of a kingdom where humans have direct relationship with Spirit, and humans are the major players. And so to unpack this idea then, the writer to Hebrews quotes Psalm 8, which he assumes you all know. We jump all over the place in Hebrews because it's how the author thought. And in doing so, he starts to answer the question of what it means to be human. Okay, he quotes Psalm 8, and he writes this. This is Hebrews 2, verse 6. What is mankind that you are mindful of them? A son of man that you care for him? You made them a little lower than the angels. You crowned them with glory and honor and put everything under their feet. Now he's paraphrasing. He's paraphrasing a psalm that basically looks at mankind and says, wow, we are so small. It looks at the oceans and says, oh my goodness, we are so weak. It looks at the stars and says, we are insignificant as humanity. And I mean, you can do this anywhere in the animal kingdom, which is where this psalm sort of focuses. You see how small humans are. You can look at a horse and just think, oh my goodness, humans are so slow. You can look at a video of an elephant flipping cars over on YouTube. There's lots of them. And you think, oh my goodness, humans are so weak. You don't even need an elephant flipping a car over. You can just try and push a cow somewhere it doesn't want to go. And you realize that humans are so weak and so soft and so small. And the psalmist here is looking at it and going, oh my, we are so little, but so magnificent. He's looking at the created world and marveling at the place God has put humanity in the center of all creation. So we are these small, soft, fragile, weak, slow little things that for some reason have been given center stage and are the focus of God's love and attention. Now the psalm, as I'm sure you're picking up, is just echoing the truth and picture of Genesis 1, the opening story of the Bible that's beautifully designed to tell us who God is and who we are in relation to him and the world around us. Both these passages answer the question that humanity constantly asks itself. What am I here for? What is the point of all of this? What does it mean to be human? Right here at the beginning of Scripture, quoted in Psalm 8, paraphrased in Hebrews 2, we're shown the purpose of humanity. Do you see it? Right here in the words of Genesis 1. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. There it is. to be fruitful and to rule. Psalms and Hebrews are quoting Genesis 1. That's this picture. It says it like this in Hebrews: you crowned humanity with glory and power. You put everything under their feet. They both say the same thing. We are to live with purpose, to govern this world, to rule. But we hear the word rule, and then, I don't know about you, but for me, a little red light goes off. That's a red flag rule. Because we hear that word, and now we think of dominate. We think of exploit. But I want to say this is just a corruption of what it means to rule. To rule is, in fact, meant to be a positive statement. This is God saying, I've given you this beautiful world. I've created you from the dust, connected to it, to enjoy it, to be fruitful, to learn, to study, to discover, to do amazing things, to go to the moon, to perform heart surgery and save lives, to dream and create and produce beautiful works of art, to make amazing music and amazing songs, to run and jump and laugh and giggle and tickle and do all these things. This is what I've created you to do, to flourish, to enjoy this world, to enjoy life and care for all of it in relationship with me. Deeply connected to creation. That's what it means by made from the dirt. It's not a blueprint on how to make a human. It says God created us connected to the world around us. There is purpose and vocation and meaning for you in these words. To take all that God has given you and to celebrate God with it. To live a full and bountiful life at peace with the world and with one another. How cool is that about what it means to be human? What a gift we have been set up for. But to bring us back to earth, the question is, what does that world look like to you? Do we see a magnificent world of everyone living at peace with one another, caring for the planet and each other, to do these amazing things in equal life? It doesn't always work out like that, does it? We get rule way wrong. The great power and potential that God has been given us doesn't often result in care and flourishing for all. It results more often in pain and exploitation. And sure, a few flourish, but they seem to do it at the expense of others. We dabble in greatness and beauty and majesty and care, but predominantly the powerful gain more power or exert that power by putting others down. Either the planet or the vulnerable often pay the cost. This is a false picture of what it means to rule. It's a fallen corruption of all that we could be. How are you feeling about humanity so far? It's been a bit of a roller coaster this morning. But this is the picture we have in Hebrews 2. The writer says, what is mankind that you are mindful of them? Mankind that you care for him. You made them a little lower than the angels. You crowned them with glory and honor. You put everything under their feet. You gave us this gift to rule and to flourish. Yet at present, we do not see everything subject to them. Humanity was destined for so much more than we're currently living. But God doesn't look at it and despair. This is good news this morning. We're getting to the good news part of it. He doesn't ignore this mess, but he enters into it and he perfects it. In Jesus, we see humanity as it could be. In the resurrection, we see humanity as it will be. Jesus took on our nature, but without all the sinful, broken desires that corrupt it. And then, as the pioneer of our redemption, through the resurrection, he ushered in this new world, as Hebrews calls it. God's kingdom was established. It arrived in Jesus' resurrection, and it will be fulfilled and completed upon his return. So in Jesus, folks, we see all that we can be. We see the promise of redemption and the promise of resurrection. In Jesus, we see what it means to be truly human. Because he experiences everything we do, but he rises above it all. Jump back to verse 8 with me. We'll see what Hebrews author says about it. Putting everything under them, us humans, God left nothing that was not subject to them. Yet at present, we don't see everything subject to them. But we do see Jesus, who was made lower than the angels for a little while, but now crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. So we find this broken world of distorted humanity with a warped understanding of what it means to rule. We're given the chance to be absolutely awesome. We sort of dabble in it, but on the whole, we get power and we use it to hold on to that power or get more at the expense of others. Enter Jesus, the human who is the fullness of what humanity could be. And he flips this understanding of power right on its head. Right at the beginning, he rules through the giving up of power. The incarnation, what is it? It's the complete, divine, cosmic, eternal reality squeezing into the broken shell of humanity. His very first act of redemption was the giving up of power. Then if that's enough, if that's not enough, how does he recapture all that glory and majesty that he for a time laid aside? How does he reascend to his heavenly throne? Does he do it through smiting? No. How does he recapture that glory that he laid aside? He does it by laying down his life, by giving it over to those who had got ruled way wrong. To the earthly political rule and establishment of power, he says, okay, Rome, come on, do your worst. And then to the religious idea of rule and power, to the Sanhedrin, he stands there silently as they bicker and accuse him and call him to be crucified. Make no mistakes, this was the beginning of his conquest moment. Oh yes. But he does it by taking all that was thrown at him. And he says, this can't stop me. I am greater than your brokenness. Let me show you. And then he walks the path of suffering and death towards resurrection, and he reverses all that is broken and corrupted. So we look to Jesus, the picture of what humanity could be. We see humility. We see love. We see a complete reversal of what we have come to think that rule and dominion looks like. Jesus defeats his enemies by dying on their behalf. And in doing so, he shows us the fullness of God and what it means to be human. Friends, to be human means to forgive. To be human means to care. To be human means to love. To be human means to step aside, let God be at the center, and extend to all around us the grace that we have been shown. This, my friends, is what you were created for. This is your God-given purpose. So to wrap it up this morning, to finish off before Zoom groups, how do you do this? Good news. It's not just your hard work. We do this by living under the Jesus layer. We connect with Spirit. That's why the angels aren't as important anymore, because we have direct line to Father God. Verse 10, Jesus is already doing this. In bringing many sons and daughters to glory, it was fitting that God, for whom and through whom everything exists, should make the pioneer of their salvation perfect through what he suffered. Both the one who makes people holy and those who are made holy are of the same family. That's full on when you think about it. So Jesus is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters. He says, I will declare your name to my brothers and sisters. In the assembly, I will sing your praises. This, right now, this morning, is what Jesus is doing for you. He is making you all you can be. He is bringing sons and daughters to glory. This is how Jesus' lens works for us, all right? It means that when God looks at us, he sees us through the lens of Christ. Through the lens of Christ that has flipped and restored and redeemed humanity to what it could be, we are now counted sons and daughters with Jesus. We are invited to move into that new creation, to be freed from the fallen nature of this world and to be fully human. Friends, let's connect with God. Let's give up trying to rule and let Spirit rule instead. Let's this morning decide to be fully human. Will you stand to finish this morning and pray with me? Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Lead us, Lord, not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen. Well, friends, your Zoom groups will have sent out the invitation to your groups, or it will be going out now. The questions for today in your Zoom group leaders' email inboxes, they've been sent out today as well. So bless you all. It was wonderful to connect with you. I'm sure there will be some questions in your Zoom groups, and if you have any others, send them to me as well. Don't forget, if you can respond to that email, which would be wonderful. In the coming weeks, we're going to be seeing how we can facilitate our pursuit of Jesus on a Sunday morning. Bless you all.
And I'm back again. How many times?
No, I've caught you this time.
No, you haven't. I pressed it last time.
I stayed and I waited because I knew he'd come back. I got you. All right, we're going to end it?
Yeah.
You can end it. Go click end.
Me end it.
Yep.
End it. End it. End it.